Welcome to r/Entitled Parents, where an entitled mom almost kills her own son. Our next Reddit post is from Quetzali Death. I need to vent here because I'm shocked and worried about this child. This just happened and I'm running off adrenaline. My Fitbit says that my heart rate is 130 beats per minute. For context, my son's school is next to a major highway with 5 lanes. Normally, the speed limit on this road is 70 miles per hour. However, during school hours, it drops to 30 miles per hour. The school sits right in the middle, and the crosswalks are at least half a mile each way, maybe more. The point is, it's not close. The road is very heavily trafficked, with giant trucks, working trucks, and all manner of cars at any given hour. So here we are. My husband is pulling out of the school parking lot, and it's a chore because of the heavy traffic. My husband notices an 8-year-old kid right next to us on the sidewalk looking across the lanes of traffic, and it's clear that he's planning on crossing these 5 lanes of traffic. Then my husband slams on the pedal because the kid had stepped into the road and my husband had to pull immediately into the street to stop the people on that lane. The kid pulls back in surprise. I jump out of the car and yell at the kid to stop. Let me tell you, this kid was not fine. I couldn't get a word out of him, and he couldn't explain to me what he was doing. He was panicked, blubbering, and looking to the other side of the road. I had to hold him so that he would stop trying to cross the road. He kept looking at a female cyclist on the other side of the road. The lady was yelling at me, but I couldn't hear what it was over the 5 lanes of heavy traffic. I figured it was his mom, so I gestured to her. Do you want me to drive him to you? She did not like that. This crazy B-word barged down those 5 lanes, thus further worsening public opinion over cyclists. She was in full bike gear, but she left her bike on the other side. She stormed across those 5 lanes of traffic, holding out her hand to stop them. The cars rolled to a stop, the last one being a gigantic Texas truck whose hood was at her shoulder. "What's the problem here?" she asked me. "Are you his mother?" I asked. "Yes, I am." "Okay, but he was trying to cross the street." "I know. We're practicing." My goodness, I can't tell you the way that my heart sank to hear that this woman planned to put her 8-year-old son into this situation and fully intended for him to do so on his own, as if it takes exposure therapy to get over one's fear of getting hit by a Punisher logo-clad murder truck. Now, I'm not a busybody. I disengage with people whose tone screams entitlement. It's a skill that you master in Texas. I am, however, shamelessly confrontational when it involves a child who can't defend themselves. I turned towards my husband, who had now parked back in the school's lot, and yelled, "Hey, it's okay. They're just practicing endangering the life of a child." He screamed back, "What?" Because, again, 5 lanes. Still, I pretended that he could hear me. I added, "I know, who does that? Not me, a normal person." Because I was just being a B-word right back to that lady. She had taken her son to the side, knelt down and held his hands, and was rambling to him about her crazy nonsense to me. I stormed into the school building and knocked on the office window, where 3 lovely women of varying levels of administrative power were already there. I said, "This is urgent. A kid tried to cross the street on his own. He almost got hit. I stopped him, and his mother told me they were practicing." Those wonderful women were in disbelief. They tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, but once I pointed out that she was in her cyclist gear and she left her bike 5 lanes away, they started to call in the cavalry. The lady most intent on stopping her took the walkie-talkie from the other lady and stormed out. The lady who stayed behind asked me a bit more about what happened. I told them, and then they discussed amongst themselves about their rules for children on the road. From here on, it wasn't my problem anymore. I only lingered slowly like the smug butthole that I am to make sure the walkie-talkie lady managed to engage the mother. When we drove past them, the mother glared daggers at me while yelling at the walkie-talkie lady. So I waved at her with a warm smile. Bless her heart, she thinks that she's right. Deep down though, I'm still panicked that this even happened. I know the school will handle it. They have a really good security system involving rules and volunteers because, sadly, that's what we've needed to resort to since Uvalde. They'll make the lady know that she's no exception to their keep children alive rules as long as she's on their property. She's free to get him killed anywhere else, though. Well, that wraps up my story. My heart rate is now 115, so that helped, I guess. This reminds me of an internet post I saw a while ago where a guy showed pictures of tons of bruises all over his chest and legs, and he was talking about how he was shooting himself with a BB gun because he was training his body to build up resistance to a BB gun, and then he could slowly work his way up to higher caliber bullets, and then once he got immune to those, he'd be bulletproof. And it's no, training your body that way doesn't actually make you tougher. It's just a way that you might kill yourself. So training to cross 5 lanes of traffic isn't training. It's just another opportunity to die. This woman is dumb. She is stupid. She deserves to have her kid taken away from her. My God. Our next Reddit post is from Lijah Cat. I was shopping at Costco and my blood sugar unexpectedly went low. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I stopped at the Costco eating area for a pizza and a smoothie. I parked at one of the indoor picnic tables sitting in my wheelchair. But still, I was clearly using the picnic table. I didn't want to eat messy food all over my lap. Before I know it, a family of 3 comes and sits at my little picnic table. The wife scoffs at me, saying I already had a place to sit? What? And she then nodded at my tiny manual wheelchair. She told me that I didn't need the table, and that I should get up and leave, well, she can't get up, so that her and her family would have a place to sit. Apparently, I'm supposed to eat in my wheelchair with no table surface and super messy food? I'm not kidding. Costco is some of the messiest pizza you can eat. Pizza grease gets everywhere when you eat it. The woman stood there staring at me like she fully expected me to grab my wheels and roll away. But I had no desire to leave the table that I found first. And on top of that, I really didn't particularly want to sit next to her screaming toddler. Then I had a brilliant idea. One thing that I buy as a female in bulk at Costco is feminine hygiene products. So I just smiled at this woman who fully expected me to move. I lifted my gigantic box of feminine hygiene products out of my shopping cart and plopped them on my half of the table. They took up a good half of the picnic table because it was a big, bulky box of them. They were clearly marked, so there was no mistaking what that box was full of. I smiled at the woman and told her she could absolutely sit at the table with me. Her little girl read the box label and asked her mom what pads are for. Well, let's just say that was the end of this entitled woman. The woman gasped in horror and quickly ushered her little girl away from me. The girl was far too young to know what pads were used for yet, so clearly they couldn't sit next to a devil like me. I now got to enjoy my unanticipated low blood sugar in peace. Normally, low blood sugar makes me feel like absolute garbage, but this time I felt quite pleased. I'm going through these comments and a lot of people are suggesting even more aggressive and mean comments or actions that OP could have taken. But you guys got to keep in mind that if you're disabled like OP seems to be, then getting into a fight is not a great idea. Our next Reddit post is from Street Blackberry. I'm a 40-year-old woman, and my parents are divorced because my dad cheated. Basically, my mom found out that my dad was cheating and then started divorce proceedings. As a result, my dad got vindictive and allowed and encouraged his mistress to get vindictive towards my mom. When his mistress broke up with him, he tried to come crawling back to my mom, who shut the door in his face. And he spent the whole divorce process lashing out at my mom, me, and my other siblings and our kids, to the point where we all had to go no contact. Anyway, the divorce was finalized. Dad and his mistress have been on again, off again. They had a kid together. There was some drama where he denied the kid was his, but he got a paternity test and it turns out it is his. Anyways, my dad showed up at my door a few weeks ago and told me that he was going to stay with me. He didn't ask me, he told me. He also told me that while he was here, my husband and I needed to move into the guest room so that he could have the master room because it has an ensuite. And, he needs that. As you can imagine, I put my foot down, hard. I told him after everything he did, how dare he darken my doorstep, and worse, not even apologize. Not even to ask how I am or how his grandkids are, but to dictate to me that he's staying in my house. I'm normally a pretty calm, go-with-the-flow kind of person, but I just lost it and screamed all the things that he did to us. The vindictive attacks, the way he used my kids as weapons to get back at me, the smear campaigns that he led against my mom. He screamed back at me, "When you came crying home after you broke up with your ex, I let you stay in my house, eat my food, and moon about in your room. I let you come home. I didn't act like a complete B-word." To be clear, this breakup that he's talking about was when my former fiance cheated on me with multiple women. Oh, and also, that house he's talking about wasn't his house, it was my mom's house. The house that he tried to steal from my mom during the divorce to give to his bratty mistress. I just shut the door on him. Long story short, the cops had to be called because my dad refused to leave. I found out today why he tried to stay with me. His mistress had been bleeding him dry with child support and alimony. I think they've broken up for good. He's had to sell every asset he had, and now he's broke. I know this because he's staying with his brother, and his brother called me to let me know. The funniest and saddest part about all this is how my dad won't stop talking about how heartless and ungrateful I am to anyone who will listen. And he's posting passive-aggressive posts on his Facebook about how you do everything for your kids, but then they throw you to the curb. This whole ordeal over the last few years has been hard. I've been going to therapy and have slowly come to terms with the fact that my father isn't the man that I thought he was. And likely, he never will be. But this, it brought back a lot of hurt. I can't believe he would do this. I just don't understand how somebody can do this, can behave this way. But it is what it is. OP, you can tell that your dad is a bad parent because when you become a parent, the job never stops. Our next Reddit post is from Swiggity Wig. I'm a 30-year-old woman, and me and my father have historically had a rocky relationship. My parents divorced when I was 5, and he married the woman that he cheated on my mother with. I was an only child, and my new stepmom had 4 kids from a previous marriage. During my childhood years, whenever my dad had custody, I spent that time with his parents, my grandparents, instead. That would be every 2 weeks and 42 days in the summer. They lived in a different state. I cherished the time that I had with them, and they would always go to bat for me. There was some tension caused early in my dad's new marriage due to my stepmom demanding that my grandparents go back to the store one Christmas and get an equal amount of gifts for all of her kids. She even took some gifts from me to give to her youngest. I spent many hours sitting on my mom's sofa waiting for my dad to pick me up, and he never did. I would later find out that he was on family vacations with his new family. I could spend all day telling Cinderella stories, but I need to stay focused on this story. Anyways, my grandparents, his parents, picked up the slack. We spent summers learning how to make baskets, gardening, camping, and various different activities. Their home was a second home to me. When I was 13, I went to go live with my dad after some methodical brainwashing, and then I would rarely see my grandparents. My grandmother would call, and they would just ignore it. It would hurt my heart to see her calling on caller ID, knowing they were just on the other line. But my dad and stepmother wouldn't allow it unless I sat at the table with them while on the call. Fast forward to summer of my freshman year, and we went to visit my dad's side of the family. On the last night, my aunt and uncle who lived next door asked if I could stay the night with my cousins. My stepmother wanted her youngest daughter to be included. My aunt and uncle declined because my little stepsister was a thief. A fight ensued in the front yard that night, resulting in physical altercations. My stepmother shoved my 74-year-old grandpa to the ground. He had a hip replacement in the 90s and already had a stiff walk. I was utterly terrified and distraught. As the chaos ensued, I packed my belongings because they said that we were leaving. I vowed then that this would be the last straw and I would never forgive them. I missed their 50th wedding anniversary because my stepmom was still upset over what his family did to her that night. The next spring, my grandpa had a stroke and was never the same. The man who had helped raise me during his son's shortcomings didn't remember my name. Shortly after, he died. Later, I left home when I was 18 to go to college where I met my husband. He's been my rock, and he helped whenever my dad threw fits whenever he didn't get his way. He showed me nothing but unconditional love and support, and he's been the father to our child that my dad never was. I go no contact with my dad every couple of years because of his behavior. There's an old saying, time heals all wounds, but I don't believe that to always be true. I maintained a relationship with my paternal grandmother until her death in December. She was a cheeky one who left notes for us to find after her death. This woman never forgot a thing when she felt slighted. That was also reflected in her will. I inherited my grandparents' house. My dad knew that they would give it to me, but I honestly think that he thought he had a chance of fighting me for it. For the past decade, my dad and stepmother have been living in an RV that is now starting to fall apart. My dad is retired military and has no savings. Right after the funeral, he stashed his belongings in the closets of the house that I was set to inherit. I discovered this after I changed the locks and added cameras because I live out of state, and I wanted security for the home before I sell my house and move into my childhood home. I put all of my dad's stuff and what was owed to him in storage, and my uncle gave him the keys. After learning this, he's been furious. My step-siblings keep reaching out, telling me that I'm heartless for keeping him out of his parents' home. My dad called me crying, and I coldly told him that if my grandparents wanted him to have it, then they would have left it to him. I also told him that he should have treated his parents better when they were alive. I have the deed in my hands now, and there's nothing he can do about it. The estate is almost settled, and what little land he does get will also have my name on the deed. I would rather share my childhood home with my daughter and all the whimsical things that it had to offer, even if my dad ends up homeless. Oh well, too bad, so sad, bad dad. That was r/Entitled Parents, and if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.